This week's episode of I Have Today is brought to you by the Spifter. The Spifter is a fun sifting spoon that makes cooking, baking, and decorating with sugars and spices so much fun. No more mess or wasting your spices. It's fast, clean, and easy. Everything looks and tastes delicious. It's also great for straining loose tea, getting pesky broken cork out of your wine glass, and draining liquid off food like olives and capers. Whether you're a novice cook or a gourmet chef, you'll love the results. The Spifter, the kitchen gadget that no kitchen should be without. Hey there, it's Diane Forster, and welcome to I Have Today, the show that inspires, educates, and empowers you through life's transitions. And each week on this show, I bring on the coolest, most amazing, awesome experts, authors, CEOs, creators, inventors, and truly life changers who have gone through their own transitions in life and reinvented themselves and have come out on the other side successful. And they come on this show to share their stories with us. And I am beyond excited about our show today because I have on a very special friend and guest, Paul Luftenegger. Hey, Paul, how are you?
Hi, it's so good to see you. It's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you too. Well, we are going to have a phenomenal show today. I'm so excited to introduce my audience to you and your beautiful music and the impact you are making on the world to so many lives. It's just fantastic. So, but before I get into Paul's bio and the interview, let me tell you what our theme of the show is this week. It is how suicide opened up a world of self-love and self-worth. And that is truly what it is all about, as we're going to get into, because Paul and I see so eye to eye on this. We have similarities, so many similarities in our journey, and we've both discovered the power of self-love and self-worth. So one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show. Okay. And then the intention statement is this. So if you're writing it down to allow it to anchor this week, here it is. I have today to love and value myself. I have today to love and value myself. Okay. So let me tell you about Paul. Paul Luftenegger is acclaimed worldwide for writing, singing, and composing conscious music to inspire and promote global love and kindness from within. Paul Luftenegger has a very strong, well-established worldwide fan base, including New York Times bestselling authors, celebrities, political leaders, and royals. Millions of listeners have tuned in to hear Paul's interviews and conscious music on syndicated radio shows with thought leaders in the broadcasting multimedia industries. Paul is an international multi-award winning singer-songwriter, inspiring and promoting global love and kindness through a complex portfolio of positive conscious songs. He is proudly an unsigned, independent, professionally trained musician owning 100% of his catalog of masterworks. That is so phenomenal. I just love that. He has recorded 7 conscious albums to help the soul feel its worth. We're going to talk all about your albums, Paul. He's been quoted by Oprah Winfrey, Christiane Northrop, New York Times bestselling author Esther Hicks. He has sang at Louise Hay. His music has been played. Did you perform at Louise Hay's 90th birthday?
No,
okay.
No, but my song was used to honor her.
I just love that. And actor, philanthropic, Glenn Close uses your beautiful music worldwide. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of the impact that you have had in this world. So I don't want to read any more of your bio. I want to talk about you. So Paul, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm so grateful to be here. And anyone tuning in, thank you for coming too.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, what you do is phenomenal. And it is so, a personal story really quick before we get into your story. I was introduced to you and your music several months ago. We have some acquaintances and friends in common. And through that, you and I got connected. And I hosted a live event called the Heal Your Spirit, Mind, and Body event. And we did this amazing work from the inside out. And one of the things that I had the audience do was hold up a mirror to their face and we played your music, we played Do You Know to them. And it was, I mean, there was so much love in the room and tears were being shed. It was just the most beautiful, cathartic experience. I was just so honored to see how connected everybody got to themselves. It was beautiful, and it was through your music. So I wanted to acknowledge you for that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. So can you share a little bit about your story and your journey on how you came to be, doing this beautiful music and work throughout the world?
Absolutely. So the big thing about, it's funny because I'm sort of in this new space right now where I realize what I've done, I think is where I'm at. And I think this is sort of a big shift for me right now, because I think when I started, I was in a very different space than where I am now. And when I started this, it was in 2011. And the truth is, I started this a long time ago in my childhood, but I didn't understand it until 2011. So I was that kid that was always sort of, I think, just picked out for music. And it was very confusing being a kid like this, because I didn't know, I was a bit of a psychic, a bit of a medium, a bit of a musician. And I didn't really get it as a kid, really. I didn't know how it all would ever make sense.
Yes.
And then in 2011, I went to a private sort of music school when I was a kid, but I sort of gave up on music. And I really thought my time had come to not be a musician. I was scared of the fact that I just didn't think music or arts could pay to be professional at a life and succeed at life. I didn't think it could really kind of make enough money.
Right.
So anyways, I sort of lived in fear and anxiety a lot of my life, quite frankly. And in 2011, my father sadly took his own life. And it's very, what I think is really interesting about what I've learned from that moment is what I didn't expect to happen did. And that was that God showed up. And, it's funny because people can say a lot of things about, people get sort of, people get like rocky when you start talking about God sometimes, because there's so many versions of what that means.
Right.
And for me, I had a direct experience with God in 2011, and it's really simply my job to share this story. And I know it. And when God shows up, it's oftentimes on bended knees, and it happened on March the 6th of 2011 for me. I'll never forget praying to God. There was police, fire, ambulance, psychiatrists, everything that showed up. And what happened is God showed up, and I remember going in front of the mirror, and the first thing that I was shown with God is that it's like I could finally see from the inside out, is how I would explain it now.
Yes.
And I didn't sort of know what was going on. I remember sort of pulling my hair out of my head, I always say. But what happened is, through this really specific day by day process with God, I, for the first time in my life, didn't care about the world. I'll say that openly. I didn't care about the world. I cared about providing enough strength to get through kind of the darkness of what suicide was for me. And when you see someone hang themselves, anyone out there, if you see someone take their own life, it's the most horrendous thing you'll ever see. It's horrendous. And it's really, really sad and traumatic. And I had to sort of heal this space of a really big wound on my heart. And I've done it. And I remember going to suicide survivors events at the beginning, thinking no one looked like they had healed from it. And it scared me.
Wow.
And no judgments to people, because I think people grieve in their own way. But for me, I was shown sort of what I needed to do to heal with God every single day. And I sort of just followed that every day. And I sort of stopped working. I stopped my life. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't be exposed to sort of those murder suicide shows, none of that. I just became an editor for what I exposed myself to. And long story short, we're now many years later, and I just wrote music. I started sitting in front of the piano every single day, and God would come through and out into my hands, and I would write these songs. I didn't write any of them down. They were all inside of me, and I just started writing, and I couldn't stop is what happened. And day by day, I just followed God, really. And that's where I'm at with you today. And it's funny, I've been invited to the United Nations 3 times. I've sang for various people I've been invited to Europe, and it's wild to sort of see my life sort of reflecting back to me what I know. I know my mission is to help people with self-worth and self-love. And music's the only thing that gets inside of us because it comes from inside of us. And people don't understand that part about music, but it's from the soul, it's from the heart. And it's the only thing that can kind of get inside of us. So, yeah.
Well said. It's so true. Yeah. So can you expand on this? So you were getting the guidance from God every day, which, by the way, I totally get, because I get it too. For you, what did that look or feel or sound like to you? Was it, and because you said, you were psychic and you were a musician, and so you had these things. Did you know back then that's what was happening to you, that you actually were psychic, or was it you realized it later?
Yeah, so for me, it's funny because I now understand. I always say you live life forward, you understand it backwards, right? Yes. So when I was a kid, I know for me, what happened is I was the kid that would call like the psychic hotline. I was the kid that sort of, when my parents would go away, I'd have visits from many spirits and souls inside the house. It freaked me out.
So you were actually seeing spirit, right?
Yes. So what would happen is my parents would go away, and there would be sort of a lot of presence in the house. And I'm talking just a few, I'm talking hundreds and hundreds. And it really scared me. I was raised Catholic and didn't really know what to do to process that. So anyways, long story short of all of it, those were the kinds of things as a kid that I didn't sort of get. But what happened when my dad died, and I like to explain it as this, because a lot of people that are actually psychic and mediums come to me. And what I like to explain it is, when someone transitions, it's an opportunity to kind of go through the veil. Mm-hmm. So it helps you. You always assume that when someone transitions or crosses over, that your relationship ends. It doesn't. It just isn't embodied anymore. It's really that simple. And you have the ability inside of yourself with your sacred technology. We're all built the same. We have the ability to tap into it. And when you do, this relationship sort of starts to expand and be understood much greater. So my job is sort of to take people sometimes through that veil. I do that with music. I am a musical medium, or an alchemist, I like to say. God is an alchemist. And as a result of that, we actually have a much different sort of I would say space than we've understood. We're like an iceberg. You can't see all of us. Right. And we're larger than just our body. And our soul and our spirit is much bigger than just this vessel. So I know for sure that, we're sort of like an avatar, as I said. And I think that we need to start understanding that we have this relationship with something greater than just this physical plane. And that's that metaphysical side. And I think, it doesn't take too much to realize something's going on in the world. You can deny this, you can go, I don't know. But the reality is we're not alone, and we never have been. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, no one's big enough to do this life alone. That's one of the messages from God. You're not big enough to do this life alone. Mm-hmm. And if you try, it's just your meager little will. But this is a much bigger thing going on now. And we're in a different time and space in our evolution. And these times have been predicted for thousands of years. And we're living them now. And it's exciting.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I agree. And I think there's never been a better time actually to be alive and experiencing this. And the catapults in advancement that we're making, and the awakening that's going on. Right. And it's so interesting, this symmetry between us, because my bottom hit in 2011 as well. And it was all of these whispers too. And I didn't see spirit. I've just always known. I just knew things, but I would hear the voice, and I heard it, in my breaking moment, very loudly and clearly that day in the bathroom. So that's why I was curious how it was showing up for you, because you're right. Every single one of us has this ability, and there is way more going on here. There's so much more going on. So, and music is so powerful, because that is really. So think about music, the way we learn, the way we memorize. Like, how can we remember songs that we, for all of these years, and yet we can't remember something we read yesterday, right? Or what we had for breakfast yesterday, right? So you're right. This is so powerful. So So for you in this transition, what has personally been the biggest challenge for you?
Well, I think what's sort of, the part of this that's sort of interesting, because I'm showing different parts, there's multi-dimensions going on right now in the world. And I talk about this a lot because what's interesting is that I was just actually in a taxi today, and I shared sort of a space with him that there's sort of two worlds going on, is the way I see this really. And I think there's a world that's conscious. And it's funny because there was once a time I would be asked a question like, do you know Louise Hay? My answer would be no.
Yeah.
And it's funny because a lot of times, with press and media, I'm asked, like certain stories and things. And it's always interesting to me in mainstream media when I ask if you know Louise Hay or Wayne Dyer or, have you heard of Iyanla Vanzant or etc. You talk about these names and many people say no. That's one world.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's this other world where and when the metaphysical side, there's many people that sort of live in that world, and there's many people that live in the three-dimensional kind of basic, like no offense to anybody, wherever you're at, it's okay.
Yeah.
But the reality is most of these people listening to this show are probably the people that know Louise Hay, or Wayne Dyer, or you, or me, or the people that are in our world, like Anita Moorjani is a friend of mine. And the reality is that I think what's happening is this expansion of understanding is happening more and more. I call it ascension, our highest self and manifest, responsible for the energy we create or co-create. But this is happening, and you either sort of are in this one world or the other. And I think it just keeps, I always see it sort of within my mind's eye, is that I see what's happening is it's pollinating consciousness.
Yes.
And we're all pollinators like bumblebees. And the reality is that if you're probably watching this, you're probably a leader in some of this stuff. And you're expanding that vibration and frequency. And the more we do this collectively, because I always say it's not a solo mission, we're on this planet together as one world, one crew, and we share this planet. And it's really no one's, it's all of ours. And, this physical side of things is shifting because ownership, I always say my message from my team on the other side is always intention is 10/10 of the law, because your intention creates sort of the future experience you're going to have by living out your intention. Yeah. And your intention's either love-based or fear-based. If it's love-based, it's peace, love, joy, happiness, prosperity. You're expanding or amplifying that like a microphone. It goes out, it reverberates, and that frequency comes back to you. So that's the sort of thing that you know this. And I love that this is sort of like that beautiful sort of understanding when we start living the creators that we are, and we get to co-create.
Yes. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So what could you say to somebody who might not be in our world yet, but is open to learning more about it now? I don't know, a piece of advice or something to let them know that they're on the right path, and to discover that self-love and self-worth, because that is really at the core of everything. Don't you believe this?
100%. Yeah. So one of the old me never used to understand this. I lived very much in my head. And I always think that your head is it's a beautiful thing. The brain's a gorgeous instrument, but like an instrument, you got to learn how to play it. And I always say that, the quote that I love to sort of talk about in some of my workshops and sort of concerts that I give is just, the longest journey one will ever take is from the head to the heart. Mm-hmm. What the heart is the compass. It's the core. You either live in your heart or your head. And quite frankly, if you live in your heart, you can go back and forth. But the reality is that your heart's like a compass. And if you don't give it a voice, our hearts have been hurt being human. That's the truth. So we've had a lot of triggers, a lot of emotional we're very sensitive people. So if you're just starting on this, I think the big thing is to love your heart, to go from your head and go into your heart. And if there's a pain in there, go through some inner reflections of what that is. And I always go to source or God and bring in that divine frequency or that pure love, that pure light into us, and actually let it go to your heart through your crown, because when you bring in that energy, it will help you heal it. And the reality is we have a lot of hurt hearts on the planet. And I think that when you start listening to your heart as a compass, then you start to rewire the brain to be something that follows your heart. And I know for me, I made it a promise to myself the day that my dad died that I would follow my heart, and I didn't care the outcome. And it wasn't attached to the outcome. And, you know, every time my heart would whisper something, I listened. And that's how I've met you. I've met Louise Hay. That's how I've met Anita Morjani. That's how I do what I do, because my heart will say something. And I got scared a lot more at the beginning, because I would be like, you want me to go give this album to someone? And I would be really awkward and be like, my heart said to give this to you. But now when I do it, I'm like, well, my heart said to give this to you, so here it is. And I would hand over a CD to anybody much differently today, but it's the same message from my heart, is I'm not afraid to sort of listen to its voice. And that is what heals you.
Yes, so powerful. And you don't live in fear, do you? I mean, is fear really prevalent in your life?
That's a very interesting question to ask me today, because I have had the most probably fearful thing that just happened the last 2 weeks with how I make some of my money. And what's very interesting about this is that I was sort of betrayed. Let's just use that word. But what I did this time that I've not done in the past, and money is a big subject because it triggers us, right? But what's funny is I decided to use all of these things I've learned for the last, 8 years of my life doing what I do. And I just thought, you know what? The universe is always conspiring to provide more of the good stuff for me, right? Yeah. So I thought, I'm not going to get all triggered. I'm going to be okay. That's the first thing. All is well. All shall be well. Just say that till you believe it, even if you don't. But just go into that space. So I did that this week for the last 2 weeks. And what's so funny, I have a bigger contract than I've ever had with what I do. And I have just trusted the universe in this one like I've never done before. And I thought to myself, no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay, because I've got everything I need to thrive.
Yes.
And so, just the reality is, this particular time for fear, I challenged myself to just try to stay in the balance of the truth with the outcome being something that will benefit me, no matter if it's what I want it to be or not. And I knew that I would just follow that. So I do get in fear. I think it's dangerous to say, oh, I'm never in fear. And I think anybody that would tell you that, like, I actually say, like, bullshit, actually, because the world can sometimes trigger us.
Yes.
But how we handle when a challenge, it's an opportunity for growth. And I think what I realize now that I didn't know as the old kind of scared, anxious person that I was, is that no matter what, I've got some really good. And this is the thing, when you follow your heart, you've got good support energy that's within your sort of aura, I would say. And we're always I think there's so much more help from the metaphysical side happening for us than we realize.
Oh, yeah.
Hands
down, absolutely. It's amazing how the universe out-delivers whatever my idea was or expectation, like every single time, right?
Every time.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being so candid and honest about that, because it's true, and it's how how things show up, and then it's how you choose to respond to them. Yeah. And look how it. Well,
and I will say this too. I used to look at some of the people that would talk. I remember, like, I was always sort of a seeker, but I would hear these things about, The Secret or those things. And I would be like, I like the idea of it, but I don't get it. What I know to be true is it goes back to one principle: follow your heart. And I think if you're not doing that, you're not really, you don't have the potential energies going. And I think this is the thing, like we have sort of a unique life, because I sort of do business that's sort of separate from my music work. Yes. But I do think that, business is something that I'm going to start dabbling into more, because I think I've learned a lot of, we basically stopped doing the corporate world, a long time ago. And, I have a few private businesses that have been very interesting. And what's sort of funny now is, I think as consciousness rises, our expectation from corporations is actually much higher now too, because as people sort of expect more good or responsible sort of corporations, there's this shift happening. And I think businesses are changing, and you can see what's going on. And I'm friends with actually the president of FedEx Canada. I'm going to just share this one thing in her book that I love. And we've talked about this, her and I. And it's that, you know, the golden rule, and this beautiful president today of a very big company just said to me today, you know what I did 50 years ago? I treated people the way I wanted to be treated. And he's a very wealthy man. And today he said it out loud to me. And I just think the president of FedEx Canada wrote in her book, you know what? The golden rule is just good for business. And the reality is if you don't live that in your business, that is the cornerstone of success. And I think treating people the way you want to be treated is actually, you know, that's kind of living in heaven, isn't it? When we all treat each other that way, that's kind of what we think and feel what heaven would be like. So I think as soon as we, you know, start taking responsibility for that, I think that that's where the world's going. And that's these conversations in business, we're going to all start, I think, thriving more because the world's sort of been passed over to people that live that way. That's what I see happening. Yeah,
I agree. I feel that too. I feel with my own brand and what we're building here, you know,
100%.
That it is, I'm actually, and I spent a lot of years in corporate America, which were great and good for me. No, you know,
totally.
No disrespect.
They serve their purpose. Nothing. No.
Totally. But that I approach things with my head up, like you're not really paying attention to what's going. You are, but you're not. You know, you're not making decisions based on any of those outside circumstances. You are going within and trusting your heart. And
and I actually just want to say something to that point, just because I think some people always. I think I've been somebody that I felt always like I had to say yes all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm sort of in this new space where I've been like, I actually did something. This person betrayed me in business after 10 years. And, you know, for the first time, I called her up. I said to her, you know, I forgive you already. I forgive you. But I'm saying no to you. We're done. And I actually, for the first time in my life, I actually said no. And I have to tell you, after I did it, I got a little like, oh my God, what have I done? But the thing that's so fun about like being able to say no, because I knew in my heart that I don't want to work with someone that's not going to respect or be honest with me. I'm not doing that anymore. I said no. And it's the first time where I've had to say no, that's enough. And actually what's sort of interesting is for the first time in my life, I think I realized that actually I should have maybe said no a few other times where I haven't. Mm-hmm. And, you know, with humility, I say this, but when you know better, you do better. Exactly. And I think for the first time, I just realized, you know, this is sort of what's happening on the earth. I think these people that have done sort of, you know, if you don't take responsibility for, I think just what you're doing, what's the point? Right. And I don't want to work with people that don't operate a certain way anymore. I just don't want to do it. And maybe that's an age thing. Like, I don't know if it's an age thing or a conscious thing, but I want to work with like you doing this today. I took off that sort of, I've had sort of a stressful last 2 weeks, but I'm really excited that I get to do this now with you. And this is sort of our future, isn't it?
It is. It is. Listen, we're collaborating and spreading this message and word. And you said so many good things in there about, you know, the capacity to say no and set a healthy boundary for yourself, whatever point in time that comes into your life. By being able to say no to something that's not serving you, you open up the space, the energetic field for more yeses and things that you do want to come in. That's a valuable message. If you're out there listening to this or watching this, that you got to honor yourself first. And if it does not feel right, because there are people like that, you know, we are going to get those opportunities to learn lessons. And so to be able for you to say no to something, and you were so honest about it too. I forgive you, but this isn't happening anymore. So that's really powerful. So, okay. I want to talk about your album in a second, but before we do, I want to ask you a question that I ask all our guests, which is, how do you live the I have today?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I remember reading this and sort of reflecting on it. I think ultimately the I part of the truth of who I am ultimately is that I love the idea of this person that is, I think, just sacred and sovereign, But I think I live that way more because I'm really interested in actually we. And I think that co-creation for me is probably the one thing that I would say. I love helping people thrive.
Mm.
And whatever that looks like is different on every given day. But I think ultimately it's an opportunity where I think sometimes people are so obsessed with that I that actually when you start sort of helping other people, and I've learned more and more that it's a balancing out of what you need. But then when you start serving others, I remember the first time I was sort of embarrassed when I first started doing this. I thought that I would have a lot more people that liked my stuff when I started, but the message within was, don't underestimate the power of one heart. And I'll tell you, I have met a lot of hearts over the course of what I do. And if you can just start serving others, what's funny is it starts amplifying out, but then it comes back to sort of show you kind of a reflection of who you are. So I live that way by actually expanding, I think, and pollinating love and kindness. And sometimes, it doesn't always feel nice if somebody doesn't notice it. But at the same time, I think when you amplify something to serve others, it's a very powerful space that actually, I would say, is exactly what you were talking about in asking that question. And I think we're starting to get there now as a human sort of experience,
Yes. Yeah, I agree too. Wow. I love it. You're very intentional. I'm on the same page with you.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So let me show the audience your album, because here it is. I have my own personalized copy signed by Paul. I love it, love it, love it. I play it in the car all the time. So tell everyone where they can get your music and access to Seeds of Peace. Here it is, Musical Meditations. It's just amazing. And like I said, we use.
So you can go.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, you can go to my website, which is Be Kindness. So BEE kindness.com. And on the actual sort of homepage, there's a menu, and you can go to purchase page, and there's actually links. Music's sort of funny because you can buy it all different ways. And some people have CD players, some people don't. But it's available on streaming services like Spotify. It's also, I always say, like, to buy an album, the music industry is sort of changing, but I do think that buying an album in a hard copy is actually sort of a special physical, I think just a physical vibration. And I think that if we can, I think there's something to holding something from your heart, from your soul in your hand. And I personally don't really I love digital music to a certain extent, but I like the physical. They've brought vinyl back for a reason.
Yes.
And it's because there's something about owning and holding something that's actually from the inside in your hand. So I sort of I don't really like the fact they're getting rid of CDs. So I like the fact that, I like to purchase what I like. So I always like to buy a CD. And that said, the album, I just want to talk about you owning that. And what this really is to me is this is an internal peace project, because this is all about, I think, ultimately honoring the two cells that came together. So when I wrote this album, there is a perfect divine alignment. And the first thing that started to heal me after my dad died was I was shown the two cells, the cell from my mother, the cell from my father, that came together. That miracle that we all have as our creation story is a very powerful space to meditate on, because that's the house that built your body, that houses your soul, your temple, right? So I had this vision with God very clearly about the importance of that. And when I wrote this album, that energy's in this. And I also want to share with you, it's been funded and paid for by people from all around the world. So there's an energy in that. So that, I think the first message in this is that internal peace is actually your natural organic state. And I knew that I wouldn't have peace in my life again until I had peace within. So this album is sort of I would say, the cornerstone or the apex part of my pyramid. And it finished my collection of songs. Because I think it's actually really important to find peace within. And this album sort of touches on that energy. So, yeah.
So powerful. And so beautiful. God, Paul, amazing. Your work is amazing. So is there
Thank you so much.
one final piece of advice you would like to share with the audience?
Well, I think most importantly, I do want to just share with you, I think ultimately, going back to the point of our meeting, we met because of suicide. And, it's funny, when I perform on stages, I share my story very openly. And I just want to say it's very important to me to talk about this, because I think a lot of times we as sensitive people, don't want to be on the earth. And
Mm.
I know I say this with, I didn't know if I would be okay after my dad's suicide. I really didn't know. I sort of dabbled with the idea, well, if it doesn't get better, I'm not sure if I can stay. I just remember thinking that. And I don't want to shy away from the truth of that, because there's no stigma, or there's nothing about that that's bad. And I
Right.
think it's okay that you might not want to feel like you want to stay here. I think it's really normal, because this world's been pretty intense for us sensitive people.
Yes. Yes.
And I do want to just touch on the fact that I think that self-worth is the first part of actually self-love. And I think that you don't realize that that space inside of you and that worthiness. And I have an album called Worthy. It's the first album that I wrote kind of after my dad died. It was before I had a producer. So it's just me with a piano. And I wrote some songs that I know are very powerful to honor self-worth. And I just want to say, if you're feeling scared or anxious or unworthy to thrive, I at one point really felt like I wasn't going to be okay, and I didn't know what would happen. But I would say this: it begins with your self-worth, and because you're here, you matter. I want to say that. If you
Yes.
weren't meant to be here, you wouldn't be. You're here because you matter. And so your story with suicide, my story with my father's suicide, and I think we're having honest conversations about this a lot more now. And I think it's an important part, because suicide rates are going up.
Yes.
We are all very important to help Earth thrive. And the Earth needs the sensitive people, because that's a superpower. You're sensitive and you care. That's actually a really, really, really powerful thing. And I think us together, I just want to say, like, let's hold hands as a community, as a human race. We're a soul. And I think that until you sort of embody that soul and know that you're worthy, you're a piece of all that is.
Mm.
And I think we forget this very, very easily, because the world sort of sometimes feels like it's forgotten us. And I
Yes.
just want to say, my father's a perfect example of that. And I think, if nothing else, we're in these circles for a reason. And I actually think, I've met a lot of people from around the world, and I have sort of access to some things going on in the world. There are a lot of really good people doing really good things. And we're in a community together, and we're going to take over this world in a very different way. And it's already happening. So I don't say take it over in a bad way. I say take over the consciousness of the power of us together. And that's an energy. And this is the thing, when you see sort of politics going crazy today, that's sort of what's going on, is this divide's happening that's never happened. And it's
Right.
us uniting and doing stuff like this and sort of taking back our own power.
Yes. Yes.
So just take good care of yourself, and, seek the people that are doing good things in the world to help each other.
Mhm. That's beautiful. Yes, please seek the help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I did. And you're right. And the consciousness is a vibration that's so much higher. So it's not like, yes, we are taking over the world, but it's not like good versus evil.
No, it's
It's
just
just
love is already won.
innovation. Yeah.
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 It
Love is
can.
already won. And love, yeah.
I was going to say the same
I love
thing.
it.
I was just
Yeah.
going to say the same thing. Well, love is all there is, really, truly.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. Well, it's been
Mm.
so wonderful having you on the show. We are going to have links to access Paul's website in the comments section. And so it's been a thrill and an honor. I love knowing you and journeying with you and sharing this space with you. And I know we have.
Thank you so much to your work. Your work is incredible. I'm looking forward to. I know this will happen. I'm often invited to California, but I haven't been for a while, and I want to do something with you. So just know that it's in my heart, and
I
I'm
already
looking
have an
forward to
idea.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
For sure. Good. Definitely. Well, we've only just begun this. So thank
Well,
you.
Thank
so
you.
much. Yeah, thank you so much for being here. All right, until next time, this is Diane Forster. We'll see you next time at I Have Today. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.